Morning, friends. I'm going to try a little experiment here, probably for about a week, just see how it goes. I'm calling this morning tea, and it came out of the idea, I guess the idea came out of some friends of mine who are doing a series. So this is Lori Shaw and Elia the Pirate Monk. They are doing, hello friends, good morning. I was going to try a little experiment. This was inspired by some friends of our family, Lori Shaw and Elia, the pirate monk, who did that trek across the United States with no money. And they've been releasing a video every single morning. They're doing it for 30 days that outlines their adventure. And my family's just really appreciated every morning having this connection with them, even if it's only virtual. And I thought, well, maybe you'd all like to try that with me for a little bit. Trying it just for a week or so and get together for morning tea. And I'm not quite sure what I'll talk about each day. So it's it's not going to be, of course, a flashy video. It's just going to be you and me being here together. But if you want to give this a try with me, let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm having matcha today. I have matcha almost every morning, actually. And you'd think I'd be having something from my local environment, but even though we largely eat local now at this point in our lives, which has long been a goal, this is one thing that I continue to have that's shipped from across the seas. This is from Japan. And the matcha I love its flavor, but I'm also fairly convinced of its health benefits. So when I imagine those health benefits and I drink it, then uh, yeah, I think it just does something for me. There's also something about this was introduced to me by a friend, and so I think of him. And we both have families now, but in our younger years we were probably closer, and now we just see each other once in a great while. But it always reminds me of him and some of the good times that we had together. This bowl, my aunt and uncle are these fabulous potters that sculpt in a traditional Japanese style often. And my mother at some point gave me, I think, 3 or 4 of these bowls. And they've always been my favorite. It's so nice because they have this little place where your thumb can hold. And so even though it's a bowl that would usually be used for soup, I now use it for tea. Over the years, having children, they've all become broken. This one's cracked and chipped. It's my last one. So I just try to every morning appreciate this bowl, the way it feels in my hands, and that tea that I'm getting to have. Are you having tea in the morning? If you do, what kind? And what meaning does it hold for you? A nice thing about those morning videos that Lori and Ellie have been doing have been just presence. Presence is this beautiful thing that I think is often missing in our world. We can even have a family or friends and yet not have presence. Because presence means being engaged in our mind with the people, let's say, that were around in that moment. And probably most of us can think of times in our lives when we've been there with somebody maybe somebody that we love or care about deeply, but we're not really there because our mind is thinking about some random thing that probably wasn't really worthy of our mental time or energy. And how much more delightful would it have been to have been there, present with whoever we were with? Of course, we can be present not just with people, but with any experience in our life. I'm sitting here and there's so much. There's just so much. You can hear the birds and the crickets. There's human sounds too. There's a truck I can hear on a distant road. And at one point that would have been a detraction for me. But now sometimes I wonder, who's behind that wheel? Where are they going? What are they thinking? What are their lives like? There's opportunities for presence all around us. And there's, I think, a little difference here because you notice when I'm thinking about that person in the truck, in a way I'm not being present. I'm off in my thoughts. But we can use our thoughts also to invite us into presence. Because the next time I see a person stepping out of a vehicle, I might, instead of just glossing over that, I might register them then as a human being, a fellow human being. It happened, where was that that was just yesterday with my family. We no, I'm sorry, that was 2 days ago. We go Amishing. We go and get our milk from some Amish friends, and we stopped at an Amish store on the way home. And there was an older couple. They were in a car that was from Minnesota. And it's funny I say older. They're just about 10 years older than me. I, I still think of myself, oddly, as about 20 years old. And obviously I'm much older than that. But as far as just who I relate to, a lot of my friends are much younger. And so, yeah. So I shouldn't say an older couple, but this man and this woman. And Beck and I just struck up a conversation with them, and it was really neat. We got to learn about them. This guy does old-fashioned photography, keeps that alive. And, before we had these, it's hard to remember. and and there was something that we were gifted from that connection, that exchange, that presence, that wouldn't have been there if we had just moved past. So when we use our thinking, I wish we could all just think of that thinking as a tool, a specialized tool that we bring out of the toolbox, and we use it very selectively and very consciously. It can just dominate our mind state all the time, or I can use it. I remember first, it's similar to that thought of hearing that distant truck. I remember the first time I looked up and I saw an airplane overhead, and it wasn't just an airplane. Suddenly, it was filled with people, and each person in that airplane had a life and stories and a place they were going and challenges and problems. And instead of just a dot moving through the sky, suddenly it was an endless storybook that connected up to the rest of the world through the medium of those people. And having that thought, even though that thought arguably took me out of the birds I could have been hearing around me, that thought was a big one that led me to starting to look around and see the humans around me, each one as a storybook, as an amazing treasure chest, essentially, filled with things that I'll never see or explore unless I really, really got to know that person well. But can I just peek in that treasure chest a little bit and learn a little bit about whoever that is sitting across from me? Again, it's not just people, but oh my goodness. Some of you might be able to identify some of the voices around me. Some of these birds, some of these insects, and each one of those species, and then each individual within that species, they all have their stories. They all have their life experiences that they're having. Yeah, hopefully you can get some of that. So presence. Maybe you can join me today. Instead of just walking through life, maybe you and me can be present. You and I can be present. I can take the time with whoever I'm engaged with to really listen to them. If I'm going to talk to them, to talk with them deliberately and consciously. Don't just spew out my words. If I'm out for a walk, to stop and look at some of the plants around me, some of the animals. This year I've been using a method that I used on and off to teach people edible wild plants with the students that I'm working with this year. And the method is to not tell the person the name of the plant or what it's about, but just sit them down in front of that plant and say, this is a plant that you can touch, you can taste, you can smell, if it is one. Some plants say don't touch it today, but just look at it with your eyes. And then having people get to know that plant intimately without any name or other words attached to it. And this really helps people to retain a, a knowingness, to develop an intimacy with that plant. Then we give it a name. Then we learn about its medicinal or edible qualities. But you know it now by its sight, by its texture, the little hairs on its stem, the smell of it, maybe even the way it moves in the wind. Believe it or not, there's sometimes with trees, we can get to know a plant by its sound, the way the wind whispers through. There's some obvious ones like a cottonwood or an aspen or a pine tree. But even a maple sounds different than an oak, the way the wind moves through it. And this presence isn't just a present for the people around us, but it is a present for us, a gift for us. Because then, we feel like we're living life. We feel like we're really getting to soak into it and enjoy it. And it feels wonderful and beautiful and full and rich. And that's something we can all have every day, kind of no matter what our situation is. There's times after like shoulder surgery when I was in tons of pain. But when I was present, even present for that pain, such a different experience than when my mind was going, oh, can I get away from this? Oh, I hate this. I'm not always going to be able to respond to you in the comments for these videos because I have some no tech and low tech days coming up. So I'll still take the time to make these videos and post them, but then I may not answer comments all the time. Maybe I'll try to answer some comments on the videos themselves. We'll just kind of see how this works. Again, I'm going to try this for about a week and we'll just see what we think. Tell me your thoughts. All right, my friends. Thank you for joining me this morning, and we will see you tomorrow.